It's that time of the day again when don't have reception, nothing to listen to, didn't prepare anything, and so once again talking to the camera while I'm driving to work. God willing, Mirz Hashem, Kanai Nahara, will be starting another job, so I have more time to make videos. Working 5 days a week, pretty much full time, especially with driving, more than full time, because I'm not making it enough to live anywhere near where I'm working, and and to afford where I can live, it's far away. So that's just how life is. I'm thankful, I was thinking about how when I started, I got out of college and started my career, and George Bush was the president, and I, right out of college, was making $50,000 a year. Not too much later, Obama comes into office. It went down to $12,000 a year, just barely eking out a very meager existence, but happy, and I felt successful. I didn't feel, but I knew Obama was at fault, and the whole in general. Now, you have Trump, been in for about 6 months, and I'm almost going to be back pretty close. I mean, with driving and everything, it's not quite the same, but about $40,000 a year, something like that. It's 38 something, I don't know, much better than 12 or the past few years, I don't know, 20, 25, something like that, So, life is good, things are good. It's good to be working hard, And, we'll see how this new job works out for me. I'll have 2 part-time jobs, so it's still tough, how to balance that. It's not quite the same, but, and maybe soon I'll find a shul or something, and I'll be a senior rabbi at a shul again. I'm thankful to be assistant rabbi where I am, but everything is what God plans, and I certainly don't want to be senior rabbi where I am. I wish our Rav Arichas Yamim Mishanim. Now, I wanted to discuss something. Is this guy going to pass me or not? What's going on? I wanted to discuss something that is rather controversial, and a lot of people have issues with it. Now, the fact of the matter is, this is not a dogmatic issue in Judaism. So, either one of these possibilities are 100% kosher. Now, indeed, the people who are teaching, who are defending, who have their apologetic arguments for one way or for the other within the Jewish tradition, have their arguments. Great people, much bigger than me, and it's not for me to really take sides. But personally, certain things appeal to me more personally than others, and that's just how it is. This is a question which is an essential question in Jewish theology. Some people say there's no such thing as Jewish theology, which is, I remember there's a Yid who he was a balabas in the shul where I was Rav in Richmond, a Yid who finished Shas a few times with the art scroll, but that's a wonderful thing. Accomplished tremendous things, and also a brilliant scientist, a doctor, and don't have. And in a way, we have what to learn from them. From out of the depths I call unto you, O Lord. In Psalm 130, it speaks of Mama Kim Persicha Hashem. And how there's perspectives, and this is really related, although to really what I want to discuss ultimately. But I really wasn't talking about theology, as is classically termed, and this Episcopal priest, when I met him subsequently, and he was recalling this, he said, very established, maybe he's listening to this now, I don't know, because he said, he would like to listen to me for 15 minutes a week, so maybe he watches these videos, I don't know, and if so, I send very warm regards and warm respect. But he said, I don't mean this disrespectfully, what I'm about to say. He said, I love your theology. That's what he said to me. And in general, the term theology is the study of God, not religious outlooks in life necessarily. It's generally referred to something else. That's another aspect of, meaning theology is part of religious study, but it's not the all and end all. But the term, I think, is more colloquially used today in the way that this pastor used it. What's his name? Ben? I don't remember his name now. It's been many years. My memory isn't so good. He does tremendous work. And Thompson is his name? So similarly, I remember I saw one of my patients lent me a book from Pastor John Hagee, and fascinatingly, Pastor John Hagee said that the only theology that God ever invented was Judaism. Again, I think he's using theology in a colloquial sense, not the way we usually use the term. I remember I posted that up, and there was a young Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, I don't remember which, an Eastern Orthodox priest, I believe, or a seminarian, who was quite appalled by that statement, but I was quite interested in it. And another, the Talmud Chacham, who actually studies theology as well, who also kind of got a chuckle out of that statement. But that's neither here nor there. And lahavdil between the Talmud Chacham and I don't remember if he was a priest or seminarian. But I'm not talking in the colloquial sense. Obviously, in the colloquial sense, Judaism has a theology, but also in the actual proper understanding of the term theology, does Judaism have a theology? There's no universal theology in Judaism other than the unity of God. That's, I think, a universal dogma of Judaism, and a widely accepted dogma of Judaism is the incorporeality of God, and the omniscience of God, the omnipotence of God, and the goodness of God. These are ideas that are generally whose finances are very tight. It's Tzimtzum, you know. To be mitzamtzem means to close, to make something small, you know. An adult who speaks to a child generally has to be mitzamtzem the das, you know. You can't say everything to a child. I don't even mean about the facts of life. I mean just about anything. Most children have to be taught basics before they could be taught, you know, bigger ideas. So, you know, like, you know, I like to talk to my children about social studies, and sometimes I won't be mitzamtzem. Sometimes I'll talk about the Constitution, talk about government, and then explain it in a way that's mitzimtzum, you know, but as far as theology, the term tzimtzum means, it's a Kabbalistic concept, but it's hard, you know, I don't understand how someone who doesn't accept Kabbalah can just poo-poo the idea of tzimtzum. The terminology they might not like to use Kabbalistic terminology, I understand, but both of these sides, both the Hasidic and the Misnagdic approaches, were both talking from a Kabbalistic standpoint, meaning they were both using the same Kabbalistic texts, and just the question was, how do they interpret the Kabbalistic texts? And so the question is Tzimtzum Kipeshuto, which is what the Vilner Gaon seems to have taught, or is it Tzimtzum Lav Kipeshuto, which is what essentially the Baal HaTanya taught, and it's a basic understanding in Hasidism. It would seem that's an aspect of Torah Baal Shem Tov, the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. It would seem that that's a basic teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, even though we don't have really writings from him, and so we can't be 100% sure. But in general, that's we have some writings, but not that many. Essentially, Tzimtzum Lav Kipshuto seems to be the essence of the Torah Baal Shem Tov in terms of theology. And when we come finally to the Nefesh HaChaim, who's a student of the Vilner Gaon, we find that the Nefesh HaChaim kind of found a middle ground between the two, but essentially it's closer to the Hasidic understanding than to the understanding of his own Rebbe, the Vilner Gaon. Which, again, these are interesting discussions. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim, though you can't say that the Vilner Gaon was 100% right, even if, and the Baal HaTanya was also 100% right. You know, even though they seem to disagree, somehow, even though really essentially Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim really only applies to Chazal.